I love working with veneer. The sky is the limit with all the different species, of course, and then get into dyed veneers, right? Dyed veneers, and then introduce the shaper. Yeah, man, just tons of possibilities. Occasionally, you're gonna run into some veneer that is a little wavy, unruly, and just hard to work with. It needs to be flat, right? It's hard to make a seam if you have undulating surfaces like this and you're trying to stitch that together. And burls and crotches, they're gonna be like that. There's a lot of different stresses as those different densities shrink and dry. They end up, you get this warped material. Figured woods are also prone to that. But even sometimes this might be as a result of the dye in it, maybe, I don't know. Some of these other species or colors like this red was really relatively flat. This purple was dead flat. This black was also pretty flat. This mauve, I don't know if that shows up on camera, but it's wavy going across the grain. I need to stitch these in the 4-foot length, make these seams, and then also work with the shaper. So flat veneer is really important, and this is how I do it. Right? Veneer softener. I think originally I bought this. You can see how old that label is. I bought a spray bottle of the stuff, and then now I just buy it by the gallon and refill this. Super simple. We're just gonna spray this. I like doing this outside, wearing gloves. I don't know how dangerous this is, but there is an MSDS sheet on that, material safety data sheet. You can check that out. I think just using common sense and not inhaling the vapor or getting it on your skin, and you should be fine. All right, with a low raking light, magnifying that undulation, you can see just how warped, wavy that veneer is. Yeah, so let's spray it and flatten this stuff out. So today is actually Halloween, October 31st. It's a gorgeous day, a little bit of a breeze. So I just get upstream of that, spray. You can see I'm wearing some gloves, respirator. And the key is to just spray it. You don't have to soak it. I mean, you can actually dip it, is what it says in the instructions. You can see how it's curled there from getting moisture on one side, but I just lightly spray it, both sides. And here you can see as I'm spraying the other side, it's starting to straighten out. Fantastic stuff. And then we want to let them set for about, 10 to 15 minutes till all those puddles are gone. You can see it's pretty wet right there. Put it on, I just put them on my open trash can so it can get air circulation all the way around, top and bottom. Yeah. And this 10 to 15 minute time frame allows that veneer softener to plasticize the wood cells and soften them. All right, perfect. Now back inside the shop, you can see I've got this brown paper, and I'll just lay these out. The paper will absorb that veneer softener. We'll put a cowl top and bottom, and I'm going to put all this in the veneer bag. I'm not sure what he meant veneer bag. I think he meant vacuum bag, right? So here's the pieces. You can see a big cowl on the bottom on top of the platen. And just to clarify, the platen is the gridded platform or board that's inside the bag. And then the 1/8 inch MDF is the caul, and then the paper, then the veneer, then more paper, and then you can make this sandwich as big as you want, and then another caul on top. All that goes in the bag. And then I like using this mesh, sometimes called a breather mesh. It's like a screen. It's basically a plastic fabric, and it allows the vacuum to do its job, especially if you have an older bag and you have a lot of wrinkles up on top of the bag, like mine does from putting large forms in there. It kind of stretches it. All right, fabulous, and we'll let that set. So I ended up putting another 3 leaves in the bag, and these have been setting for about 6 hours. So let's check it out. And incidentally, these have been pressed 3 separate times. And just to clarify, every time I press it, of course, I'm changing the paper out. So the paper is always dry and fresh. And the time that you leave it clamped or in a vacuum bag really depends on the severity of the wrinkle. I usually let it set for 6 to 8 hours, something like that. Sometimes overnight, just depends on my schedule. But I think you could get away with changing it about every 6 hours, just enough to get all that moisture to absorb into that paper. You could use paper towel. I like brown paper, works the best. On small projects, I even have brown paper sacks that you can just tear and use it like that. Don't use newspaper. The print will bleed onto the veneer. Now, incidentally, the directions do say not to use this on dyed veneer, so I did some small samples just to see why, and I didn't see any problems. Maybe a little bit of the dye bled off, but nothing significant. And here you can see these beautiful veneers. They're flat, they're flexible, and just fantastic. They're going to be so much easier to work with now. Yeah. And you know, if you've ever worked with curly or wavy veneers, as you try to flatten them, sometimes they can crack and split. It's just nerve stomping. Beautiful. Now we can bring them over here. I've got a couple of sours set up and a couple of cowls. We're just going to flatten this. And this doesn't show in the camera, but both of these boards are kind of bowed. So I utilize it in my favor and put the bow or warp inwards, and then we can clamp that down, yeah? You know, in all actuality, this is a good time to mention, you do not have to have a vacuum bag to flatten your veneer. Of course, you could do it with a couple of cowls just like this, clamps, squeeze the crap out of it, and you're going to get flat veneer. This is actually how I used to do it before I had a vacuum bag, but a vacuum bag is ideal. All right, so when can I use this? Well, it's been sitting for about a day after it came out of the bag, after I changed the paper 3 times. So I thought I would try something. So what I have here is a moisture meter, and let's see how it registers. Between 6, I don't know if you can see that. Let me. Between 6 and 8, mostly 6, should be fine, right? This ugly thing is a chunk of apricot, and it's been outside. It's registering at, wow, really wet on that end. 8, 12, 20. So yeah, these things are pretty accurate. Fantastic little device, super handy. I've never used it on veneer, but I can't imagine why it wouldn't work. Yeah. Incidentally, your hands, your fingertips, face, your skin, right, is super sensitive, and you would feel that moisture. If it feels cool and maybe damp, then of course it's evaporating and still wet. It smells dry. I mean, you can't smell the veneer softener, barely. So yeah, I think this is fine. All right, so I started thinking, I've got time before I actually need this. I want to make sure this is absolutely dry, regardless of what a moisture meter says, regardless of how it feels. So I put paper between all these pieces. I'll clamp these, I'll let these set for until I need them, which is probably about a day, to absolutely ensure that they're dry. Because if you use any veneer that has a little bit of moisture and you make seams, it could shrink later as it dries and pull those seams apart. I don't want to take the chance. So, more paper, yeah? I really hope you got some good use out of this video and how to use veneer softener. This is the finished piece. The skyline, or that mauve, is what we flattened out. This was created with the shaper origin. And of course, these are just the veneers stitched together. They haven't been sanded or lacquered. I'll be showing the final project soon when it's complete and installed. It's going to be glorious. So click, like, subscribe, learn. Thanks for watching.